Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Tanks with the mighty Jingles, and welcome back too to what has always been one of my favourite vehicles in the game, the British Tier 9 tank destroyer, the A39 Tortoise. Not to be confused with the other British A39, which is a road that runs southwest from Bath in Somerset through Wells, Glastonbury, Street and Bridgewater, ending up on the Cornwall coast at Falmouth. Very important you don't get those two confused. One is an amazing tank destroyer, the other is just a really shitty way of getting around Somerset, Devon and Cornwall. The Tortoise, of course, is not a paper tank. It did actually exist. In fact, it does actually exist, although it was never put into production. But should you feel the urge, you are entirely welcome to go and check this thing out for yourself at the Tank Museum in Bovington, and I definitely recommend that if you get the chance, you take it. The Tortoise, it must be admitted, is not exactly a pretty machine. You'd think twice if you ran into one in a darkened alley outside a pub, and you definitely wouldn't want to spill its pint, because while it is very slow, it is incredibly heavily armoured, and it boasts one of the most incredible guns in World of Tanks. And that's a gun that XxFiveOneSevenxX here is definitely going to be getting value for money out of during this particular Tier 9 battle on the Mountain Pass map. This gun, the 120mm L1A1, the same gun fitted to the Chieftain, fact fans, assuming the best possible combination of equipment, crew skills and consumables, can manage damage per minute in excess of 4,200. And that is terrifying. And it manages this with a reload of 5.62 seconds on a 400 alpha damage gun, with a 1.36 second aiming time and accuracy of 0.27. And it manages all of that with 259mm of penetration on standard armour-piercing ammunition. Swap it out for premium APDS, 326mm. You don't want to be caught in front of one of these things, at any range. In fact, the further away you are, the more trouble you're in, because there's no chance that you're going to be able to take advantage of the Tortoise's one big disadvantage, the fact that that gun can only fire straight ahead. Even then, the firing arc on the Tortoise's gun, and this is something that's quite common to other British tank destroyers, is phenomenally good. That gun can swing 20 degrees to either side, giving it a firing arc of 40 degrees. Exactly twice as good as the firing arcs found on, for example, equivalent French tank destroyers, where the gun traverse is so bad that if you're firing at a target that's moving across your field of vision, you pretty much have to move the tank itself in order to keep the gun pointing at a target, with all of the consequent reticle bloom that entails. There's none of that on the Tortoise, and the fact that you are able to angle the gun so steeply means that you're also able to angle this very boxy armour. And it's very thick boxy armour to begin with, usually well in excess of 200mm all across the front. But angling like this to make the most of the gun arc also effectively increases most of that frontal armour to well over 300mm of effective thickness. All of which is a very convoluted, long-winded and technical way of saying that unless that KB3 gets out of there, he is proper fucked. And yeah, in his situation, I would have probably jumped off the bridge as well. And this, by the way, XxFiveOneSevenx's position here at the end of the bridge, this is the gold standard in positioning for Tortoise players. This is absolutely where you want to be, in a match with no artillery, in a position where you can angle the armour and still get the gun pointed at the enemy, where they can only come at you from one direction, where they have to cross what's basically a killing ground with no cover and no concealment in order to get anywhere near you. You basically park your Tortoise at one end, put the kettle on and brew yourself a nice cup of tea, because we are British after all, and say, "Come at me, old chap," and proceed to murder anybody who takes you up on the challenge. Sadly, in World of Tanks, just like in real life, a good thing rarely lasts forever, and XxFiveOneSevenxX has run out of pilgrims willing to sacrifice themselves on the altar of the great god 120mm L1A1, which may be just as well under the circumstances, since the team have completely collapsed on the eastern flank, or in the process of collapsing in the middle and on the western flank as well, and any tanks on the eastern flank now have a clear run right into the base. If only somebody was relatively nearby and in a position to do something about it. Oh look, here comes 517 in the Tortoise. You know, it's nice whenever you see somebody who realises that the minimap isn't just there to obscure your view of the bottom right section of the playfield. And oh look, somebody on the enemy team is in fact capping. Who's it going to be, kids? It might be the T95, but it's more likely to be the Comet. Oh, hang on a second, there are two of them in there. It's the T95 and the Comet. Well, this should be interesting. 517 is being backed up by Jagdpanther, and oh look, it's the T95. The T95 faced with a choice of targets, one of which is definitely going to kill him. The other one probably isn't, naturally chooses to shoot at the one that probably isn't. 517 teaches him the error of his ways, and there's the Comet. Now this of course is the big disadvantage of the Tortoise. It can actually turn pretty quickly for such a large block of metal, but it's never going to move as fast as a Comet. So 517 elects to take a couple of hits, and then puts himself into a position where the Comet can't get around him, by backing up against the cliff wall. The Comet accepts the challenge, because let's face it, he doesn't really have much choice in the matter. And 517 kills him too. 517 now has 3 kills to his name, but he's one of only 3 tanks left alive on his team. Let's not concern ourselves too much with his surviving teammates, because they're going to die very quickly, and 517 is going to find himself alone against 7 enemy tanks. What is a Tortoise driver to do under such circumstances? Well, you can see him doing it. His 2 biggest disadvantages are his lack of speed and the fact that he can only fire in a frontal arc. So by driving to the top of the hill, he's ensuring that nobody can get around behind him. And the speed advantage, enjoyed by most of the tanks that he's facing, the Batchat, the Carnarvon, the AMX 5100, is more or less negated by the fact that they have to climb up a hill to come to him. And that's going to slow them down drastically. And he's got a gun that fires every 5 or 6 seconds and does 400 alpha damage, with at least 259mm of penetration. Not only that, they can't even win by capping and force him to come down from the hill, because he can pretty much see the entire cap circle from up here too. This is about as good as it gets in a Tortoise. And yet you'd be appalled and astonished at the number of times I've seen people in exactly this situation who instead choose, of their own free will, to fight down there. Yeah, I know. Couldn't have said it better myself. Oh, here comes today's first victim. Okay, bit of a misplay there. Used auto-aim, but the Batchat was moving far too quickly. Little bit of a camera bug there. Second shot, also with auto-aim, but luckily the Batchat obliged us all by slowing down and stopping. Next, the Jagdtiger 88. Oh, actually, maybe the Setter. I mean, he might have been able to get up and around us, although his gun would have had a hard time actually doing any damage. Now, plugging seriously, 1 health. 517, if I were you, I'd demand a refund. Ah, okay, this is slightly more problematic. Of the surviving enemy tanks, the AMX 5100, even though it's going to be slower climbing a hill, definitely has the speed to get up here and causes problems. Unless, of course, it decides to just kind of stop, and then move forwards, and then move backwards a bit, and just kind of generally waffle around. Expending its ammunition fruitlessly in the Tortoise's frontal armour. Another one bites the dust. 4 down, 3 to go. Who wants some? 517 doesn't execute this flawlessly by any stretch of the imagination. There are quite a number of fluffed shots here. But the thing is, his mouse hand was shaking. Which is entirely understandable. And also, with the rate of fire on this 120mm gun, it doesn't really matter that much. I mean, you're still doing 400 damage every 10 seconds, even if you miss a shot here or there. And thanks to the phenomenal accuracy and aiming time of this gun, he's not missing that many of the shots, despite the fact that he's constantly moving to deny that Carnarvon He has to come down from the hill. Now, of course, we just saw that the T-25-2 on the enemy team, who's apparently the only member of the enemy team with a functioning brain, managed to get up onto the opposite hill with shots into his flank, but being forced to come down the hill and go face to face with a Carnarvon didn't exactly work out badly for him either. 9 down, 1 to go. It's hard to believe that just a couple of minutes ago he was facing 7 enemy tanks, and now he's just facing the T-25-2, and well, I don't think anybody was putting any money on the T-25-2's chances of pulling a win out of that one. The remarkable thing about this battle and this replay, aside from the textbook positioning of the Tortoise, which, let's face it, is only really possible on this map under these circumstances, and everything just came together perfectly, but it could have all still gone horribly wrong for 517, and in fact almost did, when the enemy team all rushed him at the same time, because, again, let's face it, how many times have we seen people in other machines under similar circumstances, but where the enemy team have all been driving tanks with different speeds, and they've all charged after you as quick as they possibly could, ensuring that they all turn up one at a time, turning what should have been a 7-on-1 fight into 7 1-on-1 fights, which a good player can win. But that didn't happen here. Instead, for once, the enemy team did the right thing. Well, they sort of did the right thing. They did all come after him at the same time, but then they kind of, well, chickened out. And faffed around in front of this gun. And the last thing you want to do in front of this gun is faff around, hesitate, and be indecisive. And that's what sealed their fate. Well, that, and 517's masterful positioning. So, 517, congratulations on an incredible and very well-deserved win. Everybody else, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you possibly learned a thing or two from it as well. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.